Hello, ladies and gentlemen, it's Rei-Lin, and I'm bringing you some more Armor Warfare today. It's going to be pretty much a short preview video here of what I mentioned back in another video about the Shark Tanks. The Shark Tanks were a package deal just from last month that Obsidian threw in here, and they included 4 tanks for about $63, give or take, based on your gold expenditure. And I just kind of wanted to let you guys and gals know that they do exist, and I did pick them up because it was a package deal, though a lot of people probably did not pick these up because, they were fairly expensive. I mean, you're still looking at about $15 per tank, which individually isn't bad, but you couldn't get these individually. You had to get them as a package deal, all 4 at once. And whether or not you think it's worth it, obviously, to a tank collector such as myself, I'm going to get it whether I think it's truly worth the money or not, just so that I can always have a video about the premium tanks. So let's just kind of quickly go over what you're getting. Basically, you're getting the Tier 5 ERC 90 F4. It's a tank destroyer, a wheeled tank destroyer. A lot of damage, no armor, pretty much just like every other tank destroyer in the game. You're getting the Fox, is also Tier 5, and it does a lot of damage very quickly. I mean, it's got a huge amount of DPM with the autocannon, and for an autocannon, it has pretty decent penetration, especially for a Tier 5, 103 millimeters. So the Fox is fast, it's fun, it's out of control for the most part. Then we move up to Tier 7, you get 2 Tier 7s, the first being the Stingray 2. So light tank, very fast, huge acceleration, decent gun. All around, it's not too bad. Obviously, it only has a little bit of armor on the turret and pretty much nothing on the side. Think of it like a weaker VFM Mark V premium tank. And then, of course, we move up to the Russian T-80. One of my favorite tanks. That's one of the main reasons I got this whole package to begin with. I'm glad that it came with the T-80. I like the T-80. It's probably one of the fastest Russian tanks in the game. It does have some really good acceleration, decent off-road handling, and the gun is typically Russian, a lot of damage, a lot of penetration, but it actually has the most gun depression of most of the Russian tanks at 7 degrees. So you don't necessarily have to be on just a flat surface to actually be effective with the T-80. Obviously, it gives up a lot of armor for that speed due to the weight, but overall, it's a very effective main battle tank at Tier 7. It's not the best, but it's Russian, so you're going to do fairly well in it just from the pure damage standpoint. So overall, it's about $15 a tank or so. Do I think the package is worth it if this should come back out with all of the balance changes coming to 2.0? Armor Warfare is going to definitely take a different turn for how premium tanks work, how most of these tanks will play. And so they may bring this tank back as sort of like an individual purchase. They may not put them back in ever again, or, who knows what will happen. But if they did put this back in just as the same package deal that it was, so you're going to get these 4 tanks for $63, do I think it's worth it? Well, this is kind of a hard sell for me because I wasn't big on tank destroyers, and I definitely thought the Fox was fun, but I don't really, even that gameplay style, I'm more of the Terminator. I don't need to go Mach 5 around the battlefield with an autocannon. I mean, they're all fun and they're all good in their own way. But mainly, I think the main draw of these tanks, especially the Stingray 2 and the T-80, since they're definitely going down different lines here, is if you haven't researched those lines at all. If you didn't go down the Russian line, you can get a pretty good idea of how the Russian line is going to play if you take the T-80 and you drive it around and see if you like Russian tanks whatsoever. I mean, it's small, it's compact, it's got a big-ass gun, it's got some armor, especially on the turret, and you get an idea of how Russian tanks generally play, because that's sort of how they play from the T-64 through the T-72 all the way up to the T-90. The same with the Stingray. They're fast tanks, a little bit of turret armor, a little bit of frontal hull, and some weird angles here and there. They're very fast. They're light tanks. They don't hit as hard as most other tanks, but they're pretty accurate, and they're good on the move. So, that gives you a good idea of how the light tanks play. Obviously, the Fox is going to give you an idea of how AFVs generally play, especially with wheels and a lot of speed, and so you can go out of control. And of course, tank destroyers play like tank destroyers, hiding in the bush in the back with their ginormous cannons doing a hell of a lot of damage very quickly. And of course, have no armor, and usually they're wheeled. So if you haven't gone down any of these lines, if you were sticking maybe with American main battle tanks or maybe going down the Leopard line, this will open up a few different ideas on where you should go spending your reputation. If you're really not interested in any of these types of tanks or the lines that they're in, then these tanks would be fairly useless to you. And they'd be fairly useless to you if you've already gone down all these lines, unlocked the normal version of these tanks, and you're not really interested in having a second version of it. Now, keep in mind, there is a slight advantage that these have if you bought it as a package deal. First of all, you get a level 5 crew, so your crew is already maxed out. And for those who give a crap, you get a shark paint job so that they do stand out from the rest of the tanks in the battle because of the unique paint job and the fact that they are premium versions of all of these tanks. So if you really like playing the Stingray 2, if you really like playing the T-80, there's really no reason to ever take the normal T-80 or Stingray or Fox or ERC out on the battlefield again, outside of just getting your double, if that's what you're after, is reputation, because since these are premium tanks, you're going to get a lot more reputation and a lot more credits out of a tank that you already enjoy playing. So for $63, unless you're a series collector, unless you really want to have a premium version of these tanks, or if you haven't gone down any of these tank lines and you're interested in trying them out to see if you want to spend reputation on those lines, I really wouldn't get the package. Now, assuming that they come out with these same tanks that are not in a package deal, where you could buy them individually, I'd probably really only recommend maybe the Fox and the T-80. The Stingrays, I don't mind, but since you've already got a VFM Mark V, which is essentially like a hybrid Stingray with, a little bit of armor on it, and it's essentially just as fast and just as accurate, I wouldn't really want to buy the Stingray 2, and I already have really good tank destroyers already at Tier 4 and Tier 5. I don't really need an ERC either. So overall, the Fox is kind of like a zippy Terminator with no armor, and the T-80 is obviously a big gun, a lot of damage. It's very effective in almost every situation that it's in because it's a main battle tank, and you can actually go hull down in this thing because it has 7 degrees of gun depression. So those are the two tanks that I would buy individually. As a package deal, I just can't recommend that you purchase it because it's just regular tanks with a different paint job and given premium status. And I think that's a big problem that Obsidian is having right now with trying to sell these tanks. If you've ever played World of Tanks, they also have premium tanks, but most of the premium tanks are very different from any other tank, even within the same line. I mean, the IS-6, for example, is part of the IS line of tanks, but it plays stylistically a lot differently than most of the other IS tanks in that line. And it's different. It's still a heavy tank, and it still does the bouncing of shots and all of that, but it's still got statistics that are very different from others around it. So that's not what's happening here. I mean, they've essentially taken a T-80 and made it a premium tank with a different paint job. There's nothing different about the tank in any way. It doesn't have any special armor. It doesn't have any special anything. So the list of actually having unique premium tanks in Armor Warfare is pretty low. They do have a couple of tanks that do play differently than most other tanks. But like the Striker, for example, that fires missiles and it's a tank destroyer. So that's kind of unique. I would like to see them start putting unique premium tanks in the game instead of just palette swapped versions of tanks that are already in the tech trees. Because, like I said, if you already own a T-80, sure, this would be a premium version if you really like it, but it's Tier 7, and these are Tier 5s. Most people aren't interested in Tier 5s anymore. They're more interested in Tier 7, 8, 9, mostly 8, 9, and 10. So until you get some 8, 9, and 10 premiums, most of these people, unless they really severely need some reputation boost, aren't going to play at the lower tiers that much. And when they do, sure, it would be nice to have a premium tank like this instead of your normal tank, because you do have the maxed out crew, and you do have a paint job that sets you apart. But outside of that, it's just it's just not necessary, I should say, as opposed to having a tank that's very unique or a hybrid tank. Not like the VFM5 is a hybrid of a light tank and sort of a heavy tank, and so it plays stylistically differently than a Stingray 2. Not completely different. It's along those lines of the history, but it's still different enough that you can feel, if you hop into your Stingray 2, you'll feel the difference between that and, say, the VFM. If I hop in my T80 here, it's going to play exactly like my normal T80, minus a small boost from the crew. So, overall, if this comes back out as a package deal, as it was originally, it's going to run you $63. I don't think it's worth the $63. I really don't, unless you're really dying to have every premium tank in the game, or you did not even play much of Armor Warfare and you want to start stocking up on some higher tiers that are premium so you can play with your friends or whatever, then sure, go ahead and get it. Otherwise, hopefully they'll put them back into the game at some point as individual tanks that you can purchase. I would definitely get a T80 and a Fox, because those two tanks are kind of fun, and I have a blast when I play them. I already own the T80, but having a premium version of it just means that I can use the premium tank instead if I'm going to play at tier 7. The Stingray 2 and the ERC, they're still good tanks. The tank destroyers are always good, regardless of the tier, just because of the huge amount of damage and the fast reloads. The Stingray 2 is obviously a very good tank. It's a light tank, it's fast, it's a scout. It does some pretty good damage if it gets left alone. It has some armor on the turret, so it can go haul down and be a pain in everyone's ass. So, other than that, I still wouldn't get them. If you're going to have a chance to get them individually, pick up a T80, pick up a Fox. Those are my two recommendations. But that's going to do it for this video, and I know it's kind of short for me, but I just want to let you guys know what was out there, and if these come back, what I would recommend you pick up. I don't think it's overall worth it for the tanks that you get, but for serious collectors, obviously, you're going to get it anyway. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please press the like button down below. It does help out my channel. If you haven't had a chance to subscribe, please click down the bottom of your screen right now, and that'll get you every update every time I upload something onto my YouTube. Thanks a lot, everyone. Take care, and I'll talk to you all next time.